Hey yo, Chris here, and thanks for tuning into the Delta. As you can tell, we're back in my office, aka my living room, and not in the Delta Mobile this week. Had a little bit of free time to do a video this way. I don't necessarily know if it's better or worse. Be honest, once you start adding a microphone and a camera and lights and a computer, you think like you can make really cool stuff, but you end up creating a lot of headaches, as in it just took me 45 minutes to reconfigure my recording software. But that's how it works sometimes. I figured we'd give this a try again. It's scorching hot outside. That's actually the main one, just to avoid hearing the air conditioning in the car and stuff like that. It's going to be in the 90s here all week long. So we're out here staying cool in a t-shirt and getting ready for the Spanish Grand Prix, and that's what this video is about. As Formula One approaches every race weekend, we try to predict the race with various picks, you know, from biggest loser to shocker to pole position, you name it, we try to predict it. The Spanish Grand Prix is kind of fun. It's a really conventional track in my opinion. Maybe it's just because I'm biased because I've been playing Formula One racing games, and I tend to do well in the Spanish GP opposed to all the street tracks. But a little bit about the circuit and its specifications. It is 4.657 kilometers long. This race will be 66 laps. The race distance in total is 307.236 kilometers to the third decimal point. It has two DRS zones, I'm sorry. And as I said before, it's a more conventional track compared to what we've been used to the last few race weekends, with a fair mix of high speed and low speed corners. And the weather is typically not an issue here, and I think from about a week out, recording here on Monday, it's supposed to be pretty nice. Maybe I'll update that later when I do the 5 things to look forward to in the Grand Prix video. Anyway, the race should allow us some sort of baseline of where the cars are going to be. Just because of the way the track, it's not like a tricky technical track like a street race. It's not like wide open like it is in like the Middle Eastern tracks or anything like that. It's just a solid racetrack where I think we're going to get an idea of where Ferrari stands and McLaren stands and Red Bull stands, outside of like something crazy like if Verstappen's like brakes blow up again or something like that. We're obviously can't hold that specific incident against them. But if everybody has a good race, we'll know where the teams are at. Quickly, before we get into the predictions, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the video or to my channel so far. It means a whole lot, and it helps the channel out a lot by hitting that subscribe button. If you like the content, click the like button as well. And that's pretty much it with that baloney. I'm not a big fan of like this whole self-promotion thing. Still haven't quite figured out how to make that interesting or exciting. And another thing, I think what we're doing this time around, we're omitting the voodoo wheel. I'm going to make a whole separate video with the voodoo wheel just to try to shorten the video or put a little bit more context to the race in the video. So for instance, we're going to go over some of the upgrades that I did here. If you like that, let me know, and I will keep the voodoo wheel video separate from the actual predictions video. If you want to go back, let me know in the comments there as well and say, hey, no, keep the voodoo wheel in the predictions. We like it at the end. But even more reason to subscribe. You know, just hit that subscribe button. You'll know when we put out the voodoo video. This is something new I want to try. But let's get right into it with the upgrades. From what I've read, the Spanish GP is a place where a lot of teams bring in upgrades. It's a track that offers good data and analysis to see how good a car is when they bring in their updates. But also, logistically, it helps out because where the track is located and all the factories are located there in Europe, it's really easy to, I guess, get these upgrades working up until like Thursday and Friday, and then getting them delivered to the track for the cars to be able to use. So that is the main reason why a lot of teams bring upgrades to this race. But we'll talk about some notable changes. The biggest one that I saw was that Ferrari is coming in with a substantial upgrade, with aerodynamics being a focal point, where they're trying to have both both the drivers receive the update to refine their lower speeds is like their priority. Yeah, again, not an engineer. I'll put a little sign right here somewhere that says I'm not an engineer. So like I'm really just going off of like bare minimum, but I figured it's interesting enough and it can affect the predictions. But anyway, Ferrari's coming up with some upgrades. Gonna focus on the aerodynamics. Both drivers are hoping to receive the upgrades prior to the race weekend. The features will include a new floor, changes to the rear of the body, and tray area. Whatever a tray area is. I'll look that up and maybe put a little graphic somewhere what a tray area of a car. What does that mean? Well, after a very, very poor performance there in Canada, it's kind of alleviating to know that Ferrari's obviously not just going to be like, oh, well, we're just going to stay where it's at. Maybe Canada was just an one-off situation, but with the updates that they're bringing, I'm hoping this, catapults them back into super competitive mode where them and McLaren are going to battle really hard and put a lot of pressure there on Red Bull. Talking about McLaren, they're also bringing in some updates. Team boss Andrea Stella stated that, paraphrasing here, that they aren't going to announce anything specific what they're going to do to the car, nor were they going to launch like some major upgrade package or anything like that, but just apply some like singular component items that will be completed for this race. There was like an option there for them to like hold on to like these singular component items and wait for another race to have like a huge package. But they feel that they can find some performance in these singular items. And what they're going to do is just add what they can to the car for this race because they think that it's going to bring some extra performance to them. Then the other big name is Mercedes. With a great showing there in Montreal, the newly upgraded front wing has shown that Mercedes has come to play at this stage in the season, but they aren't necessarily done. Mercedes plans on bringing in a floor update as well, and it hopes to add even more performance to the car that seems to be reaching the competitive realms there against the top teams of Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull. And again, what I find really interesting about that is like I don't necessarily think Mercedes is now suddenly a threat to the Constructors' Championship, but the teams that are, Red Bull's the top dog, Ferrari and McLaren right behind them, they're going to be a thorn in the side of those teams. So if Mercedes starts stealing points, it's going to make it that much harder for McLaren and Ferrari to move ahead. So it is going to definitely be interesting seeing where Mercedes finishes this coming race weekend. I think they're going to be a big, big problem. And if you're a Mercedes fan, I'm sure you're jumping for joy, but I'm a Ferrari fan and we're 50 points off of first place. So for the love of God, yeah, come on, Toto. You had to do that to me, huh? But again, don't be surprised if Red Bull, as well as the remaining other teams, bring in some sort of upgrades. It's a very common thing to do there in Spain. I just thought I'd highlight the biggest ones that I saw upon my research for this video. But let's get into the predictions, and we will start with the biggest loser. And for the biggest loser, I have Alpine. Alpine has been surprising us, well, at least me, following Monaco. By no means are they a rocket ship or something like we should be like, holy cow, watch out for Alpine. But I've been kind of talking them down, and they've kind of been proving me wrong, showing a little bit of progress, every single race, whether it's an extra placement finish, a little extra pace during quali. They've been showing a little bit something. However, I think the double point weekend last week there in Canada was just because the race was chaotic, to say the least. And because of the rain and the DNFs and all that stuff, they stumbled their way into points. Which is good. You need every point. It doesn't matter how you get them. As long as you get them, it helps the team out. I just think in a race like Spain, where the weather isn't going to be an issue and all these teams are bringing in upgrades, I don't see Alpine doing very well and would be rather disappointing. And I got them finishing around their P16, P17 range like they were earlier in the season. Moving on, though, to exceptional performance, I have Sergio Perez. Why do I have Sergio Perez? Well, he doesn't really have a choice. His qualifying has been atrocious, which has been a major, major reason why his races haven't been good either. He, 2 races in a row, last 2 races, didn't even get out of Q3. The race prior to that, didn't get out of Q2. And Red Bull just gave him that extension. He needs to be performing. I think he is a good racer. I am still a Sergio Perez backer. I will, until he just starts like flubbing it all season long, I will stand behind Sergio Perez. I think he is a fun, entertaining race car driver, at the bare minimum, to make things exciting while trying to take a place and crashing into his teammate. But yes, Sergio Perez is going to have an exceptional performance. Again, the exceptional performance is always relative to the actual driver and what car they drive. Well, due to recent times, an exceptional performance doesn't even mean Perez needs to make podium. If he can get in like top 8, show Red Bull that he is a viable race car driver that can help the team, get points for the constructors. That's really what his bar's set at now. Get out of Q3, get into Q1, finish top 8. Boom, there you go, Perez, you're doing your job. Now, if you have an exceptional performer, you'll have a big disappointment too, right? So, for my biggest disappointment, I have Daniel Ricciardo. His performance has been improving as the season progresses. However, I do find it inconsistent when I was kind of like looking up some of the placements and finishes throughout the season. He had that P4 Miami sprint finish, decent quali in Monaco, and a decent finish in Canada. But where the results are the most consistent, I find, like race by race, it's P12 to P15 throughout the season. I love Daniel Ricciardo. I think he's a super, fun guy, cool guy, great for the sport, all that stuff. So it does kind of pay me to talk about him in this way. But despite the hype and the ifs and the buts and the maybes, I think Daniel Ricciardo will fall back into his P13 range. Even though we always, cross our fingers in hopes that he will find the points, I just don't see it happening this weekend. Daniel Ricciardo, no points this weekend. Now moving on to one of my favorite picks, the statistically improbable pick. It's the shocker pick. And for my shocker pick at the Spanish Grand Prix, I have Max Verstappen falls into the midfield. The main reason why is you'll find out here in the next few picks about my podium predictions and winner and stuff like that. But I think also Mercedes is going to perform well here in Spain. They might get podium. They might fall short of podium. Not exactly sure. But they are going to do well. And if I have other people getting to the podium and winning the race, mathematically, that puts Max Verstappen then at P6. And that also means if Piastri can do well too, that means even he could fall to P7. I can't believe I have a logical explanation for this. In my head, there's this crazy narrative where all the competitors do very well this weekend, and the Red Bulls just don't. And that's how you end up with Verstappen getting P6 or P7. So that puts me at pole position. And it's not going to be Max Verstappen. Because if Max Verstappen was getting pole position, I'd have him just taking the lead and definitely getting the podium. Probably the win too. But I have Lando Norris. He's just been on another level. Speed demon, every race that he's been in, since his win in Miami, he's been pushing Verstappen the most out of any other driver out there. And I get that Mercedes and George Russell there got pole position last week, but it wasn't like Lando was millions of miles behind or anything like that. Lando had some pace last race. Lando had pace in Monaco. Lando has had pace, again, since his win. And, again, I just don't know if Verstappen's going to have that great of a weekend. So someone's got to fill that void. Lando's been the most consistent, and I think Lando's going to take pole position. And now we'll go on to the podium picks. For P3, I got Charles Leclerc. Like I said, I think Lando's getting that pole position. It's going to be pretty tough to give it up given the way that he's been driving. Ferrari had a horrible, horrible race weekend. And I'd love to say, well, they're going to fix those problems and bring in these upgrades and going to warrant a 1-2 finish. They're going to be amazing. Charles Leclerc raises first place trophy. I'm always hesitant when I hear about upgrades because the first thing that comes to mind is Aston Martin. They bring in the upgrades and it seems like they regress, right? I don't necessarily think Ferrari's going to bring in the upgrades and regress. I just think that when you bring in things that make your car better, you also have to like tweak and figure things out, and maybe you just don't get it figured out in a race weekend. So you go into the next weekend with a little bit higher expectations and a little bit more optimism to win the race with your upgrades, if you're a team like Ferrari. But that doesn't mean I don't think Ferrari's going to do well, because again, I think Red Bull is not going to do well, and that's where I have P2 at Carlos Sainz. It's his home track. It's pretty much the only reason. Where I can't find my sides. There, Carlos Sainz. He's my guy. It's his home track. He's on my favorite team. I'm just going to basically base P2 off of emotion, outside of anything logical or whatever. I'll be a homer. But it's also that he can't, right? Like, it's not that I don't just want him to win. I want him. I feel that he can, because again, they are bringing in the upgrades. I don't think it's going to be enough to win the race or anything like that. But you can see that people tend to do well on their home tracks, regardless of what stage car they are in. Look at Yuki Tsunoda. Did he win the race? No. But when they were in Japan, he did very, very well for his home track. And even Zhao Guanyu, he's in a tractor. But when he went to China, he did a very good job and had all the support. Well, Carlos Sainz on his home track, and he has a great car on a great team. And P2 for Carlos Sainz. That's simple. That's where I'm going with it. But that leads me down to the winner. And if I say that it's not going to be the Ferraris and it's not going to be the Red Bulls, that kind of deduces it down to who's going to be the winner. I don't think it's going to be Piastri. One of his biggest foibles, in my opinion, is he burns through his tires, which is cool because he is always pushing, and I love aggressive driving. It's so fun to watch a guy just be like, full send, let's go. But to Piastri's detriment, that tends to mean that he peters off towards the end, where then Lando has the pace and the tire life to take advantage. And because of that, Lando Norris wins the race. I said I was going to pick a different winner than Max Verstappen, and I think I have enough evidence to back it up. And Lando Norris, McLaren get the win, Ferrari P2, P3, and probably Piastri somewhere between P4 and P7. That's how I'm thinking. But anyway, those are my predictions for the Spanish Grand Prix. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe, because like I said, after this, I'm going to shoot the Voodoo Wheel video, and we'll post that right after the predictions video, and we'll have fun with the Voodoo Wheel. But anyway, take care, stay safe, and have fun out there. Bye, everybody.